But tomorrow, back in this country, the House Select Committee investigating the Capitol insurrection will use its final public hearing to vote on criminal referrals to the Justice Department against former President Donald Trump. Over the past 17 months, the panel has interviewed hundreds of witnesses and held nearly a dozen hearings, investigating Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election and his role in inciting the Capitol riot. On Monday, they are expected to refer at least 3 criminal charges against Trump. These referrals to the U.S. Justice Department. CNN's Zach Cohen joining us now. Zach, good to see you again. The committee meeting tomorrow. Lay out the plan. What can we all expect?
Yeah, Frederica, tomorrow is really the grand finale for a committee that spent the last 17 months investigating the January 6th insurrection and also Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election. You know, this has really been an unprecedented investigation, both in scope and in scale. And tomorrow we're going to really get a chance to hear the committee's closing message. And part of that message is going to be that the former president committed crimes. We know that the committee, sources are telling us, that the committee is considering at least 3 criminal referrals to the Justice Department related to former President Donald Trump. Those crimes include obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the federal government, and most notably, insurrection. Now, the last one is really interesting. That would be an unprecedented statute to try to lean on as a congressional body. But, you know, we're going to hear more about that tomorrow as the committee runs through its evidence and runs through statute by statute why it believes the former president committed crimes.
And Zach, committee member Congressman Adam Schiff offered his thoughts on criminal referrals earlier today on State of the Union. What did he say?
Yeah, Frederica, simply put, Adam Schiff believes that Donald Trump violated multiple laws in his attempts to overturn the 2020 election. And take a listen to what he told our colleague Jake Tapper earlier this morning.
As a former prosecutor, I think there's sufficient evidence to charge the president.
To get a conviction now?
Well, I don't know what the Justice Department has. I do know what's in the public record. The evidence seems pretty plain to me. This is someone who, in multiple ways, tried to pressure state officials to find votes that didn't exist. This is someone who tried to interfere with a joint session, even inciting a mob to attack the Capitol. If that's not criminal, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, and Congressman Schiff also was asked specifically about that insurrection statute, and he seemed to think that Donald Trump's actions lined up pretty well with what the statute says as far as violating. He pointed out, interestingly, that to violate the insurrection statute, you not only you can incite the violence, or you can give aid or comfort to those who did. So it will be interesting to see if the committee tries to make that case tomorrow as it unveils its evidence and body of work during tomorrow's meeting.
And with these potential referrals, what kind of impact are we expecting they may or may not make overall and even on the DOJ investigations?
Yeah, the referrals themselves are largely symbolic. The committee is not a prosecutorial entity, but at the same time, we've heard over and over again from these members, especially for the last 2 weeks, that as the investigation went on and as they continued to review the body of evidence, that they had to say something because they believe more than ever that Donald Trump committed crimes, and that for the historical record even, just to be on record as a committee and saying this is what we believe, that really is the significance of the referral that we're likely to hear about tomorrow.
All right. Zach Cohen, of course, we'll all be watching. It'll be live right here on CNN. Thank you so much, Zach Cohen in Washington. Let's talk more about all of this with John Dean. He is a CNN contributor and a former Nixon White House counsel. So good to see you. So based on what you have heard so far from these hearings, do you believe the committee has made the case that former President Trump should be charged with one or more crimes?
I think they've made an overwhelming case, Frederica. I wouldn't miss it. I'm back here in Washington to watch it live tomorrow. So I think that they have much more evidence than we know. We know from their 10 hearings what they have generally laid out. They've cited criminal statutes along the way. Liz Cheney read from a statute and then showed how they had evidence that hit right on all fours on that statute. But I think the report that they're preparing to release later in the week will be highlighted tomorrow. They may even release an executive summary of it tomorrow. So it's a big day. It's an important day. It's a historic day. Senate Watergate Committee didn't venture this far when they were investigating Richard Nixon.
And then I wonder, in your view, what will the statement be if after 17 months, a dozen witnesses and thousands of documents, no charges are filed by the DOJ?
Well, that would be kind of surprising given the fact that the Attorney General has selected a special prosecutor to make that decision, and they don't do that lightly. The department is very proud, and they can say no as well as a special prosecutor. It's very unlikely you bring a special prosecutor in to say no, though. They've got somebody who is trained and able to prosecute these cases, and I think that, even if they didn't do Trump, there are certainly many others, but I think they will include Trump, and that's a unique problem in our system. We have not prosecuted a former president, and there are all kinds of political fallout from that. There are practical fallouts from that, and there are legal fallouts from it.
And will those legal fallouts, the political fallouts, could that kind of overwhelm the importance of proceeding? Might it outweigh or allow for any real reticence to move forward on prosecuting a former president?
Well, I think that they'll make decisions along the way that, there's a very real possibility that his violation of national security laws in protecting documents that he took with him could come before the department has to make a decision on January 6th and his participation in an insurrection. He's already been impeached for that. The public is generally aware from the impeachment proceedings what he did and how he did it. But he may well find himself facing an indictment even before the recommendations of the committee this week come to play. So it's a very complex and very interesting and very historic event.
It is. During the Watergate hearings, as you just mentioned, President Nixon faced impeachment charges, and a federal grand jury, was also prepared to indict him on 4 criminal counts for his role in the Watergate scandal. But he resigned and was pardoned, so he was never charged. For Trump, he has already announced that he's running for president again, 2024. Isn't he already sending the message that he thinks he will escape indictments?
It's hard to read his decision to run for president, and as early as he made it, as anything other than a defense of sorts that would cast the effort to prosecute him in a very political light. That's the way he would want it. That's the way he can attract attention to his base and say, oh, this is just a witch hunt. They don't want me to win the presidency again. Well, I don't think he's going to win the presidency again. I'm not even sure he'll win the nomination again. But this gives him some cover, political cover, which actually in a court of law should make no difference.
In your view, are these committee findings, whatever the report might say, and the potential, DOJ next moves, is it all less about former President Trump and more about protecting the sanctity of the U.S. presidency and democracy?
I think it's very much about our democracy and not having our presidents abuse their power and use it to somehow corrupt the election process. I think the president has to be called on this, and it would be surprising if this doesn't play out in what for Trump will be the worst case scenario.
John Dean, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.